You're always aiming at something, even when you don't realize it. Your thoughts aim you in a direction. Your fears aim you in a direction. Your expectations, they aim you too. Your habits, yep, those aim you. Your self-image, sorry, those aim you too. And especially those repeated emotional patterns, you guessed it, they aim you. And once the inner system has a target, guess what it does? It begins organizing around it. That target can be purpose, growth, healing, truth, but could also be fear or rejection, avoidance, confusion, or our favorite around here, survival.
Yeah.
So the question is not, do I have direction? The question is, what direction has my inner world been given? I'm Justin Gates, and you're listening to the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. So happy you're joining us today. I, of course, am joined by my compadre, my comrade, my brother-in-arms, Michael Perry.
Hey, fam.
So, Mike, today, this episode, we're going to explore the idea that human beings have this inner goal-seeking mechanism. Whether we want it or not, we got one, right?
Yeah.
And when that target is clear, that mind, maybe this thing, right, begins to organize our attention, our behavior, and movement around this aim that we have. But if the inner target is fear or the feelings of fear, rejection, and so on and so forth, that same mechanism will most certainly work against us, right?
Yeah. I think this is one of those episodes that's going to fly under a lot of people's radar with how important it is. Because, again, like you said in that intro, this is something that we are always aimed. And in more directions than one. Our belief systems shape us, our values shape us, and most importantly, the way we perceive ourselves shape us. And even if you think you're someone who just does the bare minimum, goes to work, come home, that in itself is a direction.
Yeah,
you know,
it is.
And it's in this world we live in today, from the hustle and bustle to just how difficult it is to get ahead. So many people end up creating these stories about not being good enough, or it's not worth it to pursue goals, aspirations, dreams, or to become more. We get complacent with that I am who I am and let life dish us whatever it throws at us. And that's not to say don't be flexible. That's one of the biggest things we teach. But it's to be intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of saying, I am who I am, no, we should be saying, I am that I am, right?
Well, and that's a whole line of thinking right there that is so deep but so true, that separation. I won't go down that rabbit hole. I'm going to fight myself, but there is so much truth to that separation.
Yeah, that's the name of God. I am that. I am. The problem is that most people are being aimed unconsciously, or they're aiming themselves unconsciously, which is something that you alluded to, right? Something we need to hammer home, and we try to almost every episode, is that this world inside of us is not a passive place. It is always on the move, right? It's whether we're conscious of it or not. And even if you feel stuck, your system is still aimed at a target. Now, that target may be safety, for example, or avoidance, or comfort, or approval. That's where a lot of us are stuck. And yes, you are stuck if you are in there. You're not stuck there forever, but that is kind of not a good direction, right?
Yeah.
And this is where people really get confused. They think they have no direction, but really they do. It's just not a direction that they chose. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so many people fall into this scope. They talk about how as you go through life, you get more bitter and you start to realize how life actually works, and you stop trying to reach for the stars. You lose that imagination. And, there's a grain of truth to that depending on the path you lead. And it doesn't mean you're stuck there once you get there, but so many of us realize life takes work. Life takes change. One of my biggest realizations is I kept wanting to be an entrepreneur. I kept wanting to be a speaker. I wanted to do all these things, but I never considered who I would need to become to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this directional stuff ties right into this, because it's my unconscious. I'm consciously telling myself I want these things, but unconsciously I'm scared of speaking. I don't feel like I'm good enough to sell. I don't feel like I'm adequate in certain areas. These undercover narratives will be what directs your life. Right. And of course you're going to feel defeated in the end, and you're going to look out at the world and be like, I'm not even going to try, because you're too busy trying to change everything out here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If your inner system is aimed at something like avoiding failure or avoiding embarrassment, you will procrastinate, you will hesitate, you will self-sabotage, so just so that you can't be judged, right? Or if you're aimed at proving your worth, you still will overlook and still feel like you're never enough. This stuff doesn't respond to just what we say we want. We say this a lot. It responds to what has been accepted, things that we resonate with, right?
Yeah. And what we do.
Yeah, yeah. You can desire change, but if the deeper aim, if you're still, the system is still aiming at fear, hey, don't risk anything, man. And your desires will say, I want love, but fear says, do not let anyone see the real you, Mike. Or
you can't handle that kind of rejection.
You may say, I want purpose, but fear says, hang out where you can't fail, right? Which is a lie, of course. Which is a lie. I picked an axiom for this segment, and that axiom is: before you can break free of negative or improper influences, you must first recognize them. It's a pretty good axiom for a lot of things.
No, I think that's a good choice right there.
Well, and it fits because this problem that we have is that it's not that we don't have direction, right? The problem is that really a lot of us are being directed by influences we haven't even noticed or consciously examined.
Why is the consumer market so effective? Why is everyone wanting to get the same things and live the same lifestyles?
Right. And at Ashla, we began everything with recognition, right? We work very hard at recognizing the things. What am I actually aimed at? Am I actually moving toward purpose, or am I moving away from pain, right? Or am I serving truth, or am I serving fear? Am I choosing this direction, or did an old wound in me choose this for me?
Am I chasing status or chasing growth?
Exactly. And those questions is where freedom starts. Because once you recognize the influence, you're no longer fully ruled by it. There will be days, and there will be peaks and valleys, but it won't have full control over you the more you recognize it. The target can be questioned. Your aim can be corrected. So from the psychological side, why do you think people can really genuinely want change, but still keep organizing their life around avoidance or approval or fear or whatever? How do people actually start to recognize what they are actually being aimed at?
Well, this is why shadow work is so important. Again, this unconscious mind, we bring it up all the time, and to some of you know exactly what we're talking about, but if you do not know what the unconscious mind is, that is where you need to start, because the unconscious mind is 95% of our thoughts, and as much as we can consciously believe a multitude of things every day, there are beliefs much more ingrained in our nervous systems, in how we show up in the world, and how these thoughts come online when we try to pursue things outside of our comfort zone. Shadow work is the act of going through and looking at the things we've been hiding from and running from our whole lives. The little patterns that started at certain points that have kept us safe, but also kept us small. And until we're able to address these parts, to accept them, not judge them, to welcome them into our lives and show them a new path, there is no moving on. The exposure therapy does help, all right? I won't say if you keep putting yourself out there, you won't find success. But there's a reason you hit the same walls over and over again, and why success stories are 1 in 100. It takes a lot of work to cultivate that inner trust, to cultivate that inner knowing. And without self-awareness, you're being pulled by strings from an unconscious force that you have no idea just how powerful it is. It is insidious.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing, but it is your operating system.
Yeah. This is where we really have to start being honest with ourselves if we have a desire to change, right? Your life will follow that target that your inner world has accepted, that you resonate with, not simply the desires that your mouth speaks. You know, like I can say I want peace, but if my inner system is aimed at control, I'm just going to keep creating tension. I can say I want love all I want, but if my inner system is aimed at avoiding rejection, I'm never going to make a connection in order to love, right?
Yeah.
I'll never put myself in a place where I can love. I can say all day long, Michael, that I want purpose. God, give me purpose. I beg you, give me purpose. But if my inner system is aimed at comfort, I'm going to avoid all the things and all the work that I have to do to get that purpose, the things that are going to get me ready to fulfill that purpose, right? And this is why alignment matters so much to us at Ashla. We cannot simply want the things. We have to aim and prepare ourselves for it. Our thoughts, our motives, our action must dictate our direction and our practice, right?
Well, and I think one important aspect of this is self-trust, right? Self-trust is not this, I trust myself over other people. Again, the conscious thought. Self-trust is something built in this operating system. I remember when I first started working with you, and I had someone in my life I deeply cared about who was my entrepreneurship buddy. We were always hyping each other up, coming up with these business ideas. We would shoot off like little fireworks pop and it'd be over. And I remember as I was going through this sort of transitionary phase, and he came to me and it's just like, all right, we need to figure out how to make money right now. And like, I know he was in a tight spot, but I remember stopping him and being like, we got to stop focusing from this level. Like right now, I need to learn I can trust myself again. I need to start showing up at the gym every day like I have been. I need to stick with school like I told myself I was going to. I need to keep these promises to myself so I can start building enough self-trust that I can start taking these bigger steps. But I'm done trying to just go out there and make money right now. And I remember he had the most bedazzled look on his face. He was just like, why the hell would you do that? He thought I was crazy. But it was those little steps that have led me to where I am today. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. This is 3 years in the making.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you're new to the podcast, Michael and I spent many years together as teacher and student, like 2 years before we even thought that we should start the podcast. Right. So yeah, these things do take time. Michael, how does this stuff show up in our lives?
You know, you use my favorite phrase for this topic, and that is self-sabotage. We will sabotage any chance of being uncomfortable, especially when it's associated with a trauma or fear, one of these shadows hidden underneath. If it touches that rejection you felt when you were 18, if it makes you feel like you might be abandoned, if there is a chance you're going to fail and you were taught that failure means that you are wrong or bad, then you are going to do everything you can to put yourself in a situation that will make sure you never feel that again. And even if you consciously, I don't care, I'll be fine, that system will work against you because it is doing exactly that. It's a primitive part of your mind. Right. It is our survival instincts that will kick on and take over us. You know, we over-identify with our thoughts, but we are not our thoughts.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. All right, show of hands. Now, nobody's going to know who raises their hands out there, but you'll see us, right, if you're watching this on video. So show of hands. If you don't want to be hurt, raise your hand. If you don't want to be rejected, raise your hand, right? If you have this thing against being seen, raise your hand. If you don't ever want to be wrong, raise your hand. You know, right? If you don't want to give up control or lose control, raise your hand. Our inner worlds will aim us at these things if that's what we're resonating with. So now, here's how this stuff starts showing up, right? Our inner monologue or dialogue, our inner, I don't know, do you guys hear people when you talk? I hear myself talking to me sometimes, but, you know, we'll not get into this just as crazy stuff, right? But however you communicate with yourself, you may hear this: do not fail. But that may be what's really keeping you from trying, because you don't want to fail, right? Or you may hear, man, don't go out there and get rejected. But really all that's doing is keeping you from creating authentic connections with people, right? You may hear, don't you dare make a mistake, not another one. But really all that's doing is keeping you trapped in this cycle of hesitation. When fear becomes the target, life shrinks in, right? It gets small. And the system, our bodies, our hearts, our minds begins moving away from the pain or trying to avoid it at all costs instead of toward purpose. And over time, avoidance can start to feel like wisdom, which is crazy.
Well, it's like, I like to look at it like Wormtail from Lord of the Rings, right? Mm-hmm. It's not always necessarily as blunt as, oh, don't go get rejected over there. It'll be much more subtle. Mm-hmm. All right, if you have a fear of rejection and say you see a girl you want to ask out and you go over there, it'll get in your ear. Oh, she's probably taken. Oh, you're going to go over there and you're going to be laughed at. Like, look at the way you're dressed. You're not ready to carry yourself into that. It'll be these little whispers in your ear convincing you that now isn't the time. This is the wrong move. That, you know what? There's something wrong with you right now that is not going to let you step into this area of the unknown, this discomfort. And that is one of the most dangerous parts of this.
Yeah. Speaking of things that whisper, the axiom for this segment of the show: fear, doubt, and confusion propel ego into action. Disaster is inevitable if one cannot abandon his or her attachment to agenda, because fear will say, do not fail. Doubt will say, you are not ready. Confusion will say, wait until everything is perfectly certain. And then ego will say, control the outcome so you do not get hurt. And this axiom works very well on our paths, especially for things like this topic today. Because when fear does become the target, the ego begins to organize our entire life around protection and control. Maybe not in that order, but those two things are the priority. And you said it best. It's not big, it's not dramatic, it's subtle. And it may not even look like fear. It may look like caution.
Rationality.
Realistic, even. Right? Just being realistic, bro. It may look
I've seen what happens here.
Right. It may look like waiting for the right time. But if the result is avoidance or shrinking or hesitation, like chronic hesitation, I'm not talking about one or two offs. Right? Sometimes we do hesitate to touch a hot plate because we're smart. Right? But chronic avoidance, chronic hesitation, chronic resentment, chronic disconnection, then you need to stop and ask yourself, maybe fear has quietly taken over where I aim, right?
I think the best question you can ask yourself to determine this is this a one-off or is this a pattern? Mm-hmm. If it is a pattern, then you know it is chronic.
Something I wanted to pick your mind on before we moved on to the next part of the show here, because this one really had me kind of scratching my brain. Because it's an interesting thought. Avoidance can start to feel like wisdom. How does that happen? How can someone tell the difference between a good, healthy caution or fear quietly aiming their whole life and making it look like wisdom?
Oh, that is a good question. What came to my mind first is like the anti-self-trust, where it's like the dark version of self-trust, where when we learn that when we don't act and we don't feel pain, we learn that is better than acting and feeling pain. And so we start to rationalize with the comfort or the predictability of life, going about things the way we always have, as the justification to stay the same. And I'm guilty of this. I used to suffer from toxic positivity, which is keeping my head above the clouds. The world would burn underneath it. And I would just be like, it happens. I'm just taking the high road. You know what? I just got to laugh at it. Nothing I can do about it. And to me, it felt wise. It felt like, oh, I'm above everyone else because I don't get upset about things. Right. And then I realized I can't actually change. I'm standing around fires all the time. This might be my fault too. This isn't just life. This is me choosing to not acknowledge the lessons life is trying to teach me. This is me avoiding them all the time.
Yeah. Avoidance becomes our path if we allow this to continue. And avoidance is a path to nowhere.
Go check out our comfort zone episode because that is it. The more you avoid, the easier it is to avoid and the harder it is to do the opposite. And eventually that shrinks around you where you are stuck and unable to move. And no one is beyond redemption. No one is above getting their lives together. But man, you let that willpower muscle atrophy, and it is going to take some serious hitting the gym every day in your mind to start getting back where you can take action.
Rebuilding trust.
Mm-hmm.
Real trust. So to change these things, we have to choose our targets consciously, not from ego, not from fear, certainly not from the need to prove yourself, but from truth, from actual purpose. And this requires, step one, the first thing, like in all good philosophy, Michael, this requires asking yourself better questions, right? What am I becoming? What am I serving? What kind of person does this path require me to practice being? What thought and motive and action need to align with that goal?
I think another important thing is just, am I becoming someone I'm proud of? You know, we compare ourselves to everyone around us, and we never stop to look at who we were yesterday or a year before. That is the only person we should be in a comparison with. And even then, it's not about what you have or where you're at in life, but who you are as a person. How much growth have you seen the last year? And don't get me wrong, we go through hardships where we are not our best self.
Mm-hmm.
But it's being able to, am I handling this hardship better than I did the last time I went through a hardship? It is this questioning and ability to reflect. And again, I love the honesty aspect, because if we can't be honest about our patterns, which is not something that's going to be blatantly obvious at first, again, shadow work, right? It is a lifelong practice of understanding the mechanisms that drive us and then reprogramming them so that they now serve us instead of try to keep us safe and self-sabotage.
Yeah, right. And this is where integrity, one of our sacred ethos, comes to play. It's where integrity is very, very important. It's where alignment is very, very important. Because all these parts, thoughts, motives, emotions, all these things start moving in the same direction with one purpose, one goal. That makes us way more powerful, right? That is what alignment looks like. It doesn't mean that life gets easy. Life will never be easy. Even when you get it all figured out, it never gets any easier. But it means that you don't have to be divided against yourself anymore. Right? It allows you to correct your behavior when you drift. Self-correction. It allows your decisions to become more simple because you have a standard that you hold yourself to. The question then becomes, does this move me toward my goal or away from it? And this is why alignment matters way more than intensity ever. Alignment is way more important than intensity, because a lot of us get really intense for a really short period of time, right? And then we fall out, we burn out. Like your example earlier of the business ideas. Man, they were hot and they would burn quick, but then they were done. They were gone, right? Alignment is steady because there's not, and it sucks because it doesn't feel very exciting, but it's steady. It's consistent movement toward what you've chosen as true. And then there we reinforce them with things, right? Through visualization, through prayer, through affirmations, through right action. Just as a few examples, things that solidify what we believe and the direction we want to go. The disciplines are very, very important.
Well, coming back to self-trust, I mean, when we want to change, when we see our lives and realize something has to change, we gotta be honest with ourselves. not just of what we want to change, but what that change would actually look like. How many phases is that? And you don't have to actually know how many phases, but it's being realistic that change requires progress. Change requires consistency. Yeah. Change requires times, because you're not going to be perfect at it. You can't just decide, I am going to be confident, and then go walk up and do whatever. You got to start small. You got to meet yourself where you're at.
Right.
And you got to be gentle with yourself, because if you're constantly judging yourself for not being good enough while you're trying to change, then you're never going to change that aspect, because you just now have shame piled on top.
That's perfectly said, too. Because a lot of people will hear what I just said and think, well, I need to be perfectly clear and perfectly disciplined. No, the real point here is about correction, right? And you did a great job of covering that. Do you have any final thoughts for the show today before we move into our exercises and the good stuff?
You know, we say this all the time, but you are not broken. I do not care how stagnant your life has become, how miserable you feel, how out of control or too in control you feel. We can always go somewhere from here. There is never a point where you are too far gone. But again, it is about being honest with where you're at and knowing what steps you can take to start building that self-trust. If you want to start exercising and you haven't exercised in a decade, don't make your goal hitting the gym. Make it going outside and taking a walk as soon as you turn this episode off. Make it something small and manageable. With any change you want in your life, it does not start with leaps. It starts with small steps. You are an infant who is learning how to crawl and then will learn how to walk. And you will stumble every time you get up at first until you got down how to stand up. You might even need rails as you're learning to walk. But then you'll learn how to run. And eventually, you're going to be right in that next phase. So just meet yourself where you're at. That is one of the most important parts of cultivating this practice.
So our practical exercise for this episode, we're going to take about 10 minutes with a journal. Because, of course, all of us have journals, right?
You and your journal.
All of us have journals, I'm sure. I'm positive of it. It can't be no one has a journal, right? We're going to take 10 minutes with our journal. Step one here is to identify one area of your life where you feel scattered or stuck or reactive, just somewhere where it feels kind of icky, right? Doesn't feel good. Step two is to ask yourself, what has my inner system been aimed at? And be honest. Be kind to yourself, but be honest. Is it aimed at growth or the path of avoidance? Are you aimed at purpose or are you just looking for approval? Is it truth or comfort, right? Whatever it may be. Step three is to take what has been that has come to the surface here, and I want you to start to clean up that target. Choose a more clearer target. Start to adjust your fire here. For example, I'm aiming toward honest communication, or I'm aiming towards more disciplined health, or I'm aiming toward better emotional regulation, or I want to contribute more creative service. You get the idea, right? Step four, you're going to ask yourself, what thought, motive, and or action would support this aim today and the rest of this week? And start small. Start with a day or a week. Work your way up to months, and then eventually you probably could work up to years. But we're only concerned about days and weeks here right now. And of course, step five is to take one small corrective action within that first day. Any extras on the exercise today?
No, other than if you enjoyed that exercise or this content is resonating with you, below in the show notes, you will find an episode guide to help you work more deeply into this process.
Yeah, and we're going to start doing that. So as these episodes with those little freebies and extras start populating, let us know what you think of them. We hope they're useful to you. If we can make them more useful, let us know. Our affirmations for today. I consciously aim my inner system toward truth, purpose, and light. I no longer allow fear to choose my direction. My thoughts, motives, and actions are moving into alignment. When I drift, I return to the path with awareness and discipline. The light guides my aim, and I walk with intention. And if I already didn't give you enough to do in your journal today, I'm going to give you some more prompts that you can kind of dig into this stuff a little better. What has my life been unconsciously aimed at lately? Where have I mistaken avoidance for wisdom? What clear target would bring more alignment to my life? What fear has been trying to aim my choices? What small action will return me to the light today? So listen, guys, your inner system is always aimed at something. The question is whether it has been aimed consciously or unconsciously. Really, that's the point. Whether you're aiming it or using it at truth or fear, by purpose or avoidance. Is it the greater self or lesser self in control? This is why clarity matters. This is why intention matters. This is why alignment matters. Because your thoughts, your motives, your emotions, and your actions, none of this stuff is random. All of this stuff is directional. They are going to move you somewhere. And if fear becomes the target, avoidance becomes the path. If approval becomes the target, you will lose yourself trying to be chosen. If comfort becomes the target, growth stagnates, stops happening because it starts to feel like danger. You don't have to walk perfectly, but you do need to keep returning back and to yourself over and over again. That's what a guidance system does. You go and you adjust, you correct. You notice when you've drifted and you turn it back toward the destination you consciously really want to go to. So as you move forward from this episode today, ask yourself, what am I actually aimed at? What would change if my thoughts, motives, and actions were directed toward something consciously? My suggestion would be that you aim toward truth. You aim toward purpose. You aim toward light. And when you drift, and you will, return. Again and again and again. If this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe and follow the podcast. Share it with someone who may be moving through life without realizing what their inner system has been aimed at. Check us out on the TikToks, the YouTubes, the Facebooks, Instagrams. Greatest website ever created. And Michael just updated it, the coaching section. Michael, tell them about the coaching section real quick before we go.
Yeah, we're expanding our modality to start working more with our clients when it comes to coaching. Justin brings the spirit, I bring the psychology. There's two different paths, or you can work with us both to help you sort of work on your shadows or accountability. It's all fleshed out in there, but we'd love to work with you and help you cultivate the life you want to live and find alignment.
The things we do, the teachings, the coaching, the episodes, the videos, the short ones, the long ones, the medium ones, all these things they exist to help us return, us and you, to return back to awareness, to help you remember, right? I'm not giving you anything. I'm trying to help you remember. And your support helps us carry this work and this mission further than you can imagine, just by simply liking and sharing. So we love you guys very much, as always. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucem.
Ad Lucem.